Back in the garage, back in the garage, back in the garage today, back in the garage. Alright guys, back in the garage tonight. A little bit different type of video. We've got some damage to Kristen's CRF100, so I'm going to pop the front forks off, make sure that it's just the upper fork tubes that are damaged. Obviously we're going to need new seals if that's the case as well, so let's get to work. We're actually just going to work on the CRF100 on the dirt bike stand instead of using the lift tonight because I need to be able to get my truck back in and the bike's going to be down a few days. Now if you look closely, actually you don't even have to look that closely there, you can see a bend in those forks. Someone ran into a tree the other day, so we're going to have to pop these off and see if there's any other damage. First thing we're going to do is go ahead and take this axle off, so we're going to take the axle nut off, get the front wheel off of here, and then get the brake unhooked and we'll move on. Now, before we pull the axle out, just keep in mind there is a spacer right here and just make note of how it's going to go back in when we go to reassemble this later on. I'm actually going to start on the left fork leg and I want to go ahead and disconnect the brake cable or brake cable clamp right here. This one's going to come undone when we undo the brace bolt. That way this is out of the way and we can just take care of that first. You can leave this little line, or you can leave this little guide on here if you want. One thing you do have to do is take this number plate off. I believe that's an 8mm head in there. This will allow us to get to the other clamp up top. Alright, so with the upper and lower bolt loosened, you should be able to push these down through. You might have to tap on them a little bit, but they should slide right out. And you can probably tell with them removed from the bike, they're a tad bent thanks to that one over there. So if you know anything about front forks, you know they're supposed to be straight and not look like bananas. So looking at everything else on the bike, it looks like it's just those upper tubes that are busted up. So I'm going to call my buddy Lance up at Ride on Moto and get him to order me a pair. Alright guys, so it's been probably a little over 2 weeks since I first took the front forks off to inspect on Kristen's bike. Got the new parts in, so let's get this thing put back together. Alright, so the big thing we got was the two upper fork tubes or inner fork tubes, whatever you want to call them. In this bag, we went ahead and got 2 bottles of fork oil from Honda. This is what it calls for. And then we also have the seal kits as well as new bushing. So we're going to get all this stuff put on tonight. One of the first things I'm going to do, though it may seem counterproductive, is put the fork back into the triple tree here, so I can go ahead and use the pinch bolt to lock it down so I can break these caps loose. Typically I would do that before I remove them, but because I was inspecting everything to make sure there wasn't more damage, I didn't do it in this case. You could also put it in a vise. I like doing it this way for 2 reasons. One, I feel more comfortable this way, and 2, I don't have a vise. Alright, so step 1 with the forks removed, we're going to go ahead and loosen up these bands on the fork boot on both of them and get these boots removed. Definitely see the bend in there now. You just take a flat bit screwdriver. You can get up in here just enough. Be careful not to damage the rubber. Should be able to pop right off of there and then just slide it right off the tube. Alright, so the next thing we're going to do one at a time is go ahead and remove the top fork bolt here. And then drain out the contents. And to let it drain the best, you do want to pump this leg up and down. Alright, so next up we're going to remove the fork socket bolt and sealing washer here in the bottom, which is a hex head. And believe it or not, that just came apart and it really wasn't supposed to. Next thing we're supposed to do is remove this dust seal, which is what I'm going to do. right now. There's the retainer ring right there that was supposed to hold everything in place, but for some reason it didn't. Retainer ring. It's the next thing that comes out, and then that was supposed to pull out of there, which it did just a little bit early. I also have this piece in here, the oil lock piece. We're going to have to pull that out next. The fork piston and the rebound spring. I'm going to pull this out, but I'm going to do it off camera so I don't make a mess. Alright, so we're fast forwarding to the next day. Kristen managed to bend the upper/inner fork tube so bad that I could not get the dampener rods out. I now have them out, so it is now time to start reassembling the forks. I've also taken the oil seal stopper out and fork slider. Everything's been removed, and I've got some stuff here from Airballs. I also have the top seals from Honda. We're going to get these reinstalled, get these forks put back together. Alright, so we got the fork piston and the rebound spring inserted. We're going to grab one of the lowers, insert this down in here. We're going to grab the bolt with the sealing washer, and we're going to torque this down to 14 pound-feet of torque. Alright, so this is like night 3 working on these shocks because the dampener rod, or whatever I think they call it, the fork piston, you guys, I don't think you can see it here. These threads are kind of jacked up from where we had to drive them out because the other fork legs were so bent up. So I had to go up to Lowe's, get myself an 8mm, hopefully drill this thing back out so then we can get the bolts put back in. Alright, so next thing we're going to do, slide the spring back down over this little piece. We're going to grab the upper fork tube, drops down in, this goes in here. Now, I should say, once this goes in, this entire thing gets dropped down into the lower fork tube, and then this bolt goes in right here. The one thing I did to keep the internals from spinning, I went ahead and put the spring back in and just kind of tightened up the cap there just a little bit. And now we're going to make sure we get this thing torqued down to 14 pound-feet. And we'll move on to the next fork. Alright, so back again with the project that will seemingly never end. The bolts that were in the bottom here, the threads were shot, so I went up to Ride on Moto the other day, got some new bolts. This bolt's just a tad bit longer, so we put a little bit thicker crusher washer on there. Should work out perfect. Already got it in the bottom of this one. Just going to get it torqued down to 14 foot-pounds of torque, and then we'll work on the other leg. Alright, so I just got the new ring here that I lost. Had to order it from Ride on Moto. Get the seal down in, get the ring on. Now we're going to put some oil in these bad boys. Alright, so with the fork tube fully compressed and no spring in it, we're going to fill it up to 8 inches from the top, or I believe it's 207 millimeters. Should be about good. Pump this leg a few times. And it should do it. So we got the spring back in, we've got the dust seal on, we've got the cap back on, 17 pound-feet of torque. Next thing we're going to do is get the dust boot put on, and then these forks are all assembled. Because these dust boots are kind of dirty, one thing I'm going to do before we put them back on is take a little bit of cleaner and get these things looking nice and black again. Alright, so it's pretty easy to put the boot back on. All you're going to do is slide it down over the fork leg, and then it's going to kind of not clip into place, but snap into place down here. And then what you're going to want to do is figure out exactly where you want this. and it's basically just like a glorified hose clamp. It's going to slide down over top of it, and then you're just going to tighten that up with a Phillips head screwdriver. There you have it, both fork legs assembled. The only thing that we have left to do now is put them back on the bike. With the 10mm socket and your torque wrench, we're going 13 foot-pounds on the top and 20 foot-pounds on the bottom fork brace. Alright, get the fork back in the fork brace. FYI, these are 12mm, 20 foot-pounds of torque, 10mm, 13 foot-pounds of torque. Now I'm going to mess around with the steering stem, get it torqued back down and the handlebars, but since we didn't go over that this video, I'm going to cut and then we'll come back to put the fender back on and then the wheel and the brake. Okay, so before we put the axle back on, we're going to put a nice thin coat of grease on it first. Alright, so we're going to put the axle in, and then this spacer is going to go right here. And then we've got to get the brake fit in. And when you go to put the brake in, you got to make sure to line this up with the inside piece of this fork tube. Alright, so with the axle through, we got two things left to do. One, thread this nut back on. Two, we need to hook this brake line back on to this mounting point right here. Alright, so the axle nut is 19mm, and we're going to torque that down to 46 foot-pounds of torque. Actually, one last thing to do, got to put the number plate on, then we're done. Alright, so I hope you guys enjoyed today's video, how to remove, rebuild, and reinstall the front forks on a Honda CRF100. If you enjoyed today's video, please give me a thumbs up. If you're not a subscriber, I look forward to you being one. If you have any questions or need some clarification, let me know in the comment section below. And as always, I'll talk to you again soon.